Hello everyone, you're on the Manhwa Vibes channel. Are you ready? Let's go. Hee-won thinks that Do-young is the right man to share responsibility with. Do-young seems to think that Hee-won is angry with him. Perhaps she is, but she told him that she's not angry. Apparently from this difficult conversation, Hee-won got a little tired and decided to go get some rest. Hee-won likes Do-young a little, though no, not a little, but rather she likes him more than she could have guessed. She had expected a more romantic response from Do-young than that she had just become the right person to share the responsibility. She thought that perhaps he felt the same way that Hee-won did, but from the looks of it, she was just wishful thinking. Do-young offered to fry an eel for Hee-won. She agreed. Hee-won picked up her tablet and turned it on. She noticed something and was surprised. Hee-won called out to Do-young and asked, "What is it?" He doesn't understand what it's about. Hee-won was confused by the fact that her name is listed on Do-jun's schedule for today. A strange situation. Do-jun explains that this is some kind of award he gave himself for the first time in 4 months. Namely this reward for working uninterruptedly for 4 months. For Hee-won, it seemed quite strange since Do-jun didn't get any rest at all today because of her. Since they had to postpone their honeymoon, Do-jun decided to free up his schedule a bit for today. Apparently this really is a reward for him. Wow, Do-jun, you really are a workaholic. He said he works very hard, but that doesn't mean he likes it. He also doesn't like housework, but he's crazy about spending time with Hee-won. Do-jun stroked Hee-won's face with his hand. At that moment, Hee-won thought about what Do-jun said earlier, that everything they do is just sharing responsibility. Do-young put his hand on Hee-won's shoulder. Then he wanted to kiss her on the lips. Apparently she didn't mind the kiss. Go ahead Do-jun, kiss her. Wow. That's a very sweet moment. After a few seconds, he threw her down on the bed. Hee-won doesn't seem to understand her feelings at all now. We move to the school where Hee-won works. We hear the teachers in the teacher's lounge discussing something and saying that Mrs. Young is shameless. They don't like the fact that Hee-won has embarrassed her colleagues. So it seems to them that she thinks she is the Madam Chairwoman of this school. One of the teachers thinks that Mrs. Young got engaged because she is pregnant. She also added that Hee-won could be kicked out as soon as the baby is born. Another teacher disagrees with this statement. She thinks she is too harsh, especially since she is discussing a person who is not here right now. To which she replied that she was just worried about Miss Young. Miss Park became curious as to how Mrs. Young met Chairman Kang. Hee-won walked up to the teacher's lounge and heard her being discussed. But she hesitated whether or not to go in, since she is not in the mood for work at all. She clearly has other things on her mind right now. Hee-won has gone outside and says she is very tired. I wonder if it's the pregnancy or just a spring flare-up. She's been feeling sleepy all the time lately. She was hoping to take a little nap in the teacher's lounge before class, but instead she heard something she shouldn't have heard. Hee-won knows that many teachers feel uncomfortable around her. She would like to go back to the way things were, but it's difficult. She thinks maybe the wedding was rushed. Hee-won was the one who was forced to marry because of the baby, especially since it was not a marriage of love. It seems strange to Hee-won that she is asking these questions now instead of asking them before the wedding. She plans to ask Do-jun if he only married her because of Do-jul and his sense of responsibility. It was easier for Hee-won to believe that he was only physically attracted to her. She should worry less and sigh a lot because it's not right for a child. Next to her on the bench sat Si-hong. She was obviously sad about something. Hee-won wondered what was wrong with Si-hoon's face. Si-hong might have asked Hee-won the same thing. She thinks Hee-won has already had a fight with her uncle. Hee-won says it's okay and asks if Si-hoon has a problem with Di-woo. She replied that no, since he got a girlfriend and now Si-hong is more or less free. It's a total relief for Si-hoon now. Di-woo found himself a girlfriend, or rather Si-hoon found him a girlfriend. He looked annoyed when she first introduced her, but now the two seem inseparable. That girl's name is Da Hai Kim and she's a senior from her broadcasting class. Subscribers, let me remind you that Da Hai Kim was hanging around Diwoo's house and Si-hong set her up with him. And now they seem to be doing well. Earlier, Seo-hoon had planned it all out by setting up their meeting. She told Diwoo that this girl was from broadcasting class. If he doesn't mind, Da Hai Kim will have a seat at the table. At that moment, Diwoo wasn't particularly happy about it. Hee-won doesn't understand, isn't this what Si-hong wanted? What exactly is the problem? Yes, this is indeed what Si-hong wanted, but she feels no joy. Hee-won thinks it's better to think about how best to prepare for the midterm now. Hee-won said this on behalf of the teacher. Now she will say as her aunt. Hee-won asked if Si-hoon really disliked spending time with Diwoo so much. After thinking about it for a while, Si-hong answered, no. She did get annoyed and angry sometimes, but she didn't think she disliked it. Hee-won concluded that apparently Si-hong couldn't understand her feelings because of the fact that Diwoo was around all the time. Hee-won advised Si-hong to think about what Diwoo really means to her. Hee-won also emphatically suggested that Si-hoon give herself time and think hard about it. And then what? Si-hong replied. You can see how Si-hong started to stutter and blush after she said that she probably likes Diwoo. Hee-won advised taking the time to gather her thoughts and then pushing back afterwards. Either way, it's much better than just sitting here sighing. Si-hoon was surprised at what Hee-won had just said, since she saw that Hee-won was also sitting next to her and sighing deeply. Yes, you're right, Hee-won replied. She nervously touched her ring. What was Hee-won thinking? She thinks it's better to act than to shy away from solving problems. Si-hoon replied, what? Hee-won said that you just have to be more decisive. While they were talking, Si-hong's classmate came up to them. He handed Si-hong a hamburger and a Coke. She asked who this food was from. The classmate didn't know who the food was from and asked to just take it. Then he quickly ran away. Si-hong immediately thought it was from Diwoo. But what's strange to her is that after ignoring her all this time, he decided to give her lunch. Hee-won thinks kids are so cute. The workday came to an end and Hee-won came home. She took a deep breath and at that moment she remembered that Do-jun said she would be home at 10 p.m. She had told him earlier that she would wait for him. So she would think about it for now and decide what she wanted to say. At that moment, Ha-in suddenly came up to Hee-won. In case you forgot, she's Soo-jin's friend and she's also known Do-jun for quite some time. She said she hadn't seen her in a while and asked Hee-won, is this where they live? Ha-in came here specifically to visit Do-jun. What a coincidence. She took Hee-won under her arm and offered to enter the house together. They got into the elevator and Ha-in started to tell Hee-won something, but Hee-won has other things on her mind right now. Hee-won doesn't quite understand what's going on. Where did she come from? To Hee-won, it all seems quite strange. Hee-won already felt something similar when they first met. But then Hee-won thought Ha-in was just being friendly, but something about her makes her suspicious. Ha-in keeps talking, but Hee-won doesn't listen to her. They get off the elevator. Hee-won thought it was strange that Ha-in got off the elevator as if she didn't want to go to the apartment. Isn't she going to visit Do-jun? Ha-in said she'd see her later and was happy to see her. This is really weird. What was that all about anyway? Hee-won will need to ask Do-young about Ha-in. She walks up to the apartment and starts to open the front door. Oh, Ha-in peeks out from around the corner. Apparently she decided to watch Hee-won. I think she's memorizing the code to the front door. What is she up to? Hee-won enters the apartment. An hour later, the doors open again. Do-jun arrives home. He saw that Hee-won didn't wait for him and fell asleep. Apparently she was very tired today. He took her in his arms and decided to put her to bed. Hee-won opened her eyes and thought to herself, when did she fall asleep? Because of that, she didn't get a chance to ask Do-jun what she wanted. She will be sure to ask him tomorrow. Moving on to the school. Hee-won walks through the schoolyard after finishing her lessons. Near the entrance to the school, she noticed Do-jun's car. She opened the car door and wanted to ask Do-jun a question. But in the car happened to be Secretary Lee, who was giving Hee-won a ride in the car today instead of Do-young. He said that Do-jun would be driving home in the work car today. This is to make Hee-won feel more comfortable. Hee-won wondered if Do-young would be free late today. Secretary Lee replied that he doubted it since Do-jun is running around like crazy at work. What he means is that Do-jun works like his pants are on fire, so he will finish on time. Moreover, the meeting Do-jun is in right now should be over in about 30 minutes, and then he will go home. Secretary Lee says that Do-jun seems to be drawn home by some inexplicable magnet. Right after lunch, it's like a flip of a switch, he suddenly rushes home. He thinks it's more likely that Do-jun is just tired and wants to go back to rest soon. Anyway, Secretary Lee is glad that because of Hee-won they are working less in the evenings and Do-jun's mood has softened. The employees of their company have a lot to be happy about lately, and it's all thanks to Hee-won. But Hee-won says it's not because of her at all. Back at home, Do-young is still working. Hee-won is sure it's because she wants to work at home in a quiet environment. Do-young glimpsed Hee-won. She asked him why he was looking at her that way. Do-jun can't concentrate because of Hee-won. She replied that Do-jun told her to stay when she offered to leave so as not to distract him. He thinks that would have been even worse. Hee-won doesn't understand what this is about. Do-young stood up and walked over to Hee-won. "Hey, Do-jun, what are you doing?" He wanted to kiss Hee-won on the lips. The romantic moment continued. Hee-won thought back to when Do-jun was working at home. Secretary Lee thought it was more likely that Hee-won was even now thinking about Do-young. She denied it. But Secretary Lee noticed with a smile on his face that the expression he saw on Hee-won's face now was exactly the same as that of Do-young. She replied that she was only thinking of her students. In that case, Secretary Lee apologized. He decided to make a joke about the fact that President Kang would be saddened when he found out that he had been traded for a bunch of students. Apparently, Secretary Lee likes to tease Hee-won. Hee-won returns home. She looks around hoping not to see Ha-in. She doesn't like to worry about it and already misses Do-young. Hee-won hopes that Do-young will be home soon and she can finally ask about some things. She opens the front door to the apartment. She senses that something smells good. Wow, Hee-won is impressed. Do-young, when did you get back in time? Hee-won thought she'd come before him. It smells really good. Oh my gosh. She saw Ha-in in the kitchen. I can't believe it. What is she doing here? Does she even have standards of decency and morality? Hee-won froze on the spot from what she saw. Ha-in must really love cooking, but what is she doing here? Ha-in says that when Do-jun comes home, they can all have dinner together. But Hee-won still doesn't understand how Ha-in got into their apartment. Yeah, what a situation. Ha-in doesn't understand why Hee-won is so shocked. Hee-won is speechless. What happened to Hee-won? She turned her attention to the food being cooked. She's all disgusted and nauseous. Oh, she's really nauseous. She stopped liking the smell of the food. It must be because she's pregnant. Ha-in asked Hee-won what happened to her. Hee-won ran to the bathroom. We won't show the nauseating footage. You know how it goes. Hee-won is hugging the toilet. Oh, I don't envy Hee-won right now. Do-jun comes home and asks Ha-in how she managed to get into the apartment. She replies that she didn't think the password would be Do-jun's birthday. That's so cute. Ha-in says that all she wanted was to surprise Do-jun since she couldn't make a wedding present. Hee-won thinks about the fact that maybe the one who doesn't belong here is not Ha-in, but her. She thinks she needs to get out of this nauseating space where there is a conversation she can't participate in, a voice she doesn't want to hear, and that disgusting paste smell. Do-jun considers this breaking and entering a crime. Ha-in responds that Do-jun is evil. Hee-won came out of the bathroom thinking she wouldn't be noticed. She quickly ran out of the apartment. Do-jun shouts to Hee-won, wait. Ha-in doesn't want Do-jun to go anywhere away from her. You don't understand what Ha-in wants Do-jun to do either. And where did Hee-won run off to? Some suspicious man. Hee-won is out on the street in tears and this man is looking at her. She thinks about how Do-jul shouldn't be crying like that even before he's born. Anyway, since he hasn't been born yet, he can't know that. Hee-won, come on, tears won't change anything. She recalls moments from her childhood when her parents fought and she cried because of it. Little Hee-won used to cover her ears with her hands so she wouldn't hear anything. She thinks about the fact that crying only makes it worse. Hee-won is actually very strong since she has been dealing with everything herself all these years. But why can't she do it now? Apparently she expected too much from Do-jun. She had hoped that he would follow her. Looks like he stayed home with Ha-in. Hee-won looked at her feet. She left the house so quickly that she came out in her house slippers. Hee-won, where did you go? Did you happen to get lost? She doesn't understand how she got here. Started looking in her pocket for her phone. Oh, it looks like she didn't bring her phone with her and forgot it at home. Hee-won is starting to panic as a lost woman. She doesn't have her phone or wallet with her. She runs out without even taking her wallet with her. Hee-won recalls passing by a convenience store. She hopes she can ask for a phone call at the store. She heard some rustling and froze for a moment. Then she heard someone stomping their feet behind her. Someone is clearly approaching her. She doesn't understand. Who could it be? Hee-won remembered the man who was standing by the road. Could it be him? She doesn't know what to do. She wants to turn around, but she can't move. He comes closer and closer to her. He reaches out his hand to her shoulder. Hee-won turns around and sees Do-jun grab the man who came close to Hee-won. The man asked, "Who are you?" Do-jun asked the man a counter question as to why he was touching his woman. The man did not know that Hee-won and Do-jun knew each other. He explained that he saw the girl crying and looking around as if she was lost. He just wanted to help. The man asked Do-jun to let him go. Hee-won kept shaking and crying. Do-jun paid attention to this. He asked if she was okay. The man vigilantly watches Do-jun. He asked Hee-won if she knew Do-young for sure. If anything, the man is ready to call the police. Do-young rudely replied that they were married. The man advised Do-jun to take better care of his spouse, since if he were him, he would do something more acceptable than making his wife cry. Finally, he said that he would treat such a beautiful wife like a princess. After stepping back a little, the strange man did call the police. Hee-won noticed this and told Do-jun about it. He replied that he would apparently be arrested for making his wife cry. Do-jun looked into Hee-won's eyes and sighed. He asked that she hug him before he was arrested. In fact, Do-jun almost died of excitement at the thought of not being able to find Hee-won. He can barely stand, and his hands are shaking. Do-young almost lost his mind. He once again asks Hee-won more insistently for her to hug him. Hee-won stands silently looking at him, thinking about the fact that he's even breaking a sweat. Apparently he's been looking for her this whole time. Hee-won walks up to Do-young and put her arms around him. He held her close to him. Do-young was very happy. He apologized to Hee-won. He said that apparently it was his fault for believing in her recovery. Hee-won didn't understand what Do-young meant. He's talking about Ha-in. The thing is, before she went to France, she was too interested in Do-jun. It even got to the point that his lawyers even filed a lawsuit. It turned out that Ha-in's father was Do-jun's high school teacher. Her father apologized to Do-jun. That was 5 years ago. And when Do-jun saw her at the wedding, he immediately called her father. He convinced him that there was nothing to worry about. Since Ha-in has recovered from her treatment in France, Do-jun believes that he is to blame for trusting her father. He assures Hee-won that he will make sure something like this doesn't happen again. Hee-won asks if Do-young was having a hard time, and she looked into his eyes. He replied that it was a little stressful. Hee-won thought that there could hardly be things much more painful than matters of the heart. Do-young kissed Hee-won on the head lovingly. Then he suggested we go home. Hee-won, after thinking for a while, refused to go home. Apparently she's not happy about Han's presence in their house. But then where is Hee-won going to go at night?